From 1974 to 2004, a shadow moved through our circles in Wichita, Kansas. He wasn't a ghost, he was a neighbor. He was a student at our university, a technician in our homes, and a compliance officer of our lawns. He lived in the gaps of our everyday lives while the names of his victims became the heavy heart of our history. This isn't a video about a monster. There are enough documentaries that give him the spotlight he craved. This is a story about the neighbors he tried to take from us. It's about the mothers, the daughters, and families that defined Wichita. This is our city. This is their stories. And this is the small circle of Wichita, Kansas. For most people, the intersection of 13th and Meridian is just a busy transit point. But in September of 1986, it became the center of my world for all the wrong reasons. I was a teenager then, walking home from school just like any other Tuesday. But when I reached this spot, the world looked different. Police tape was strung across the street. Officers were diverting traffic. The air felt very heavy, even if I didn't understand yet why. Because of what happened just blocks away, my grandparents made a decision I would never walk these streets alone again. For months, I was confined to a city bus, an hour-long ride to West Wichita just to stay safe. At that time, I called it an inconvenience. Today, I call it a tragedy. The inconvenience was a shadow cast by the loss of Vicki Wegerle. Vicki was only 28 years old in 1986. She was the mother of 2 young children and a wife to her high school sweetheart, Bill. She was a graduate of North High School, a true daughter of Wichita. On September 16th, while the rest of us were going about our ordinary lives, Vicki was taken from us in her home on West 13th Street. The sidewalk in front of her home I walked every day home from school. But after that day, I didn't do that again. That was the beginning of what I thought was an inconvenience, a decision made by my grandparents. Moving north to Park City, Kansas, a suburb of Wichita, we find the story of Maureen Hedge. In 1985, Maureen was just 53 years old, a mother and a grandmother who was deeply loved by her family. She lived on Independence Street, a quiet neighborhood where people felt they could leave their doors unlocked. Maureen was a woman of routine and community. She was active in her church and was known for her kindness. When she vanished from her home in the middle of the night on April 27th, it sent a shockwave through the north side. Park City held its breath. For 8 long days, her family and neighbors lived in a state of suspended agony, hoping for her return. But the search ended on a dirt road miles away. Maureen wasn't just gone, she had been stolen from the safety of her own street. The nightmare did not end there. Just 6 years later, in 1991, the nightmare repeated itself with Dolores Davis. She vanished in the dead of winter, leaving behind a home that showed many signs of a violent intrusion. Her home was also on Independence Street, less than a mile from the killer. For nearly 2 weeks, the city searched the frozen landscape until she was found under a bridge. It was the final time the shadow would strike, leaving Park City to mourn a woman who should have been safe in her retirement. Years later, in 2005, after Maureen and Dolores were taken, my late husband Jerry and I also called Park City home. We were OTR drivers, spending weeks at a time out on the open road. When we'd return, we'd often found citations left for us because our lawn had grown too long while we were away. The man who stood on our property, the compliance officer who nitpicked the blade of grass and signed those papers, was the same man who had stalked these streets for decades. March 17th, 1977, the fear entered the south side of the city to a home on South Hydraulic. Shirley Vian was only 24 years old, a mother of 3 who was known for her fierce devotion to her children. Shirley's story is one of incredible bravery. When the shadow entered her home with her son, her first and only thought was for her kids. Locking them in a bathroom to keep them safe, the monster in the living room tied the bathroom door shut. Shirley was a protector. She stood between her children and the worst kind of evil, giving her life so they could have theirs. He did plan to take their lives, but something interrupted him. Later that year, on December 8th, 1977, the Circle reached Nancy Fox. Nancy was 25 years old, lived on Pershing Street in a duplex. She was a professional woman working at a local jewelry store, a face many Wichitans might have recognized from their holiday shopping. Nancy was independent and full of life. She had a bright future ahead of her, and in the city she called home. The shadow not only took her life, he also called 911 to report, "You will find a homicide at 843 Pershing, Nancy Fox," and hung up. He called from a payphone not far from her home. Her father, Dale, had to identify her at the hospital, a memory he says he will never get out of his mind. By 1980, the pressure on our city's leadership was mounting. KAKE-TV and reporter Larry Hatterberg was the very newsroom the killer was trying to manipulate with his letters and taunts. My grandfather actually worked with Larry years prior, and my mother even babysat Larry's children as a teen. Our city was tightly woven. And as a classmate of mine in the 80s was Derek LaMunyon. His father was Police Chief Richard LaMunyon, chief at the time of these murders, and he was carrying the weight of an entire city on his shoulders. Our local newspaper was even receiving communications from the killer. It was nonstop for a little while, but this man craved so much publicity, and when he didn't get it, he let him know. In April 1979, the Circle nearly claimed another life on North Pinecrest. Anna Williams was 63 years old, a widow who loved square dancing and her family. She didn't know that while she was out enjoying an evening of dance, a shadow had already entered her home. He had cut her phone lines and was waiting in her closet with his hit kit of rope and tape. That night, she decided to stay late at the dance and then went home to her daughter's house to spend the night. She returned home to find her home had been burglarized. The shadow later wrote in, asking, "Anna, why didn't you appear?" Just a few miles away near the heart of Wichita State University we find the story of Catherine Bright. Catherine was only 21, a student at WSU who lived with her brother Kevin in a house on North Hillside. She was part of that vibrant, ambitious energy of the university, a young woman with the world at her feet. On April 4th, 1974, that world was shattered. Catherine was a fighter, even when the intruder entered their home and attacked both her and her brother. She fought for her life. Though Kevin survived his injuries to tell the story, we lost Catherine that day. The home where Catherine was killed no longer stands. It was torn down a few years later. To understand the shadow that hung over Wichita for 3 decades, you have to go back to where it all began, Edgemoor Street. In January of 1974, the Otero family was the picture of an American dream. Joseph was a retired Air Force sergeant, and Julie was a devoted mother. They had 5 children, and their home was filled with the energy of a family building a life together. But on January 15th, that life was silenced. Joseph, Julie, and 2 of their children, 11-year-old Josephine and 9-year-old Joseph Jr., were taken from us inside their home. It was a crime so shocking, so unfathomable, that it changed the DNA of Wichita overnight. We went from a city that didn't lock its doors to a city that looked over its shoulder always. 3 of the Otero's children survived. They were in school that day: Daniel, Carmen, and Charlie. This family may have been the first victims, but they were the family that deserved to grow old in a city they chose to call home. What do all of these neighbors all have in common? They are the names and faces that make up the 30-year nightmare of Wichita. They are the lives stolen by the man who called himself BTK. For 3 decades, he hid and worked in plain sight while these families were left to carry the weight of his silence. Even with the confession and a conviction, the circle may not truly be closed. The FBI and local investigators have long looked at 8 other unsolved murders across Wichita and Oklahoma, cases with haunting similarities to the ones we've discussed today. Wichita has always had an unusually high number of cold cases for that era. And while investigators pushed for answers, the man in the cell stayed silent. He didn't confess to those 8 lives, and no physical evidence remains to bridge the gap. I refuse to give him the power of this story. We give it to the victims, because while he tried to erase their names, Wichita has spent 50 years making sure they are never forgotten.